And we've gone live as she's put her paw down my shirt. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Photo Mishmash. This one being broadcast live February 7th, 2018. Happy February, everybody. Although, was it February last week? Or no, it was still January last week.
Yep.
That's how dates work.
Yep.
Got it. So this is that show where today I happen to hold a puppy for a little while, but mostly we talk about photo stuff, we being me and my friend Steve. Steve, thanks so much for joining us again.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here.
Back in the bedroom, I see.
Yeah, back to the, I like my desktop computer. For those who don't know, I've got my office is like in my bedroom here, and it's kind of my beat lab where I do all my editing and stuff, and it just feels way more comfortable. But not to say I won't be back in the old armchair downstairs anytime.
Sounds good. And you know, I know when my woman is away, I do let the heat get a little bit low, and will often wear a hat inside. Is that what's going on there? Are you turning into a little bit of hippie,
Actually,
Steven?
well, it's funny. We have the opposite issue here. She's the one that's always kind of, she's like the one that watches the expenses as it relates to the heater and the air conditioner and stuff. I just like the house to be comfortable because I figured if you move from Santa Barbara, California to East Tennessee, California money, and cash it in on being comfortable. Now, there wasn't a lot of money, but that mentality of just like, hey, we're going to be comfortable in this house is here. But yeah, I've tried to honor her wishes. She's out of town at a meeting this week, and I've got the heat turned way down, and therefore I've got the beanie on.
Got the good Fjallraven beanie on. Yep.
Plus, since she's been out of town, you know, I've been living in the same clothes for about 3 days. So,
gotcha.
Figured you didn't want to look at my oily hair.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Doesn't do laundry update.
Yeah.
No, I'm there with you. Yeah, so I'm going to put the puppy down in a minute because she would like to take a nap. But this is Rika. She's from Costa Rica, and we are currently fostering her until she finds her forever home. That's what we keep saying. But no, we won't be keeping her because we have 2 dogs, and 2 dogs is enough dogs. But she is just the sweetest thing.
Okay.
Even at 2 in the morning. Go ahead, Steve.
First of all, 3 dogs is not too many dogs. I think you should keep her. Because look at that face. That's ridiculous.
I know.
Oh, she's really so cute. And she hardly looks like the piranha that you were describing.
Man. You should see her when she's feeling a little bit more rambunctious. Literally just all teeth. And but it's hysterical. Even as I'm fearing for my appendages and important other parts of my body because she's in bed with us, she is still adorable and cute, but it can be a little scary at times. So she's quite sleepy at the moment. She's been running around in the backyard a bunch.
She's going for the ear. See,
yeah,
that's wow. Ouch.
Yeah, see, you got a taste of that. And she's got a long tongue too. She really gets in there. All right. I'm going to put her down in the bed and see if she settles down, or maybe she wants to leave. We'll see. But, you know, it's exciting to be able to do that, to provide her a sweet, kind of comfortable home instead of, you know, being at a kennel or an animal shelter until she finds people that want to take her longer.
You know what I really like is I like the fact that you've become this huge 250,000 subscriber YouTube star, but you're not above having a puppy just bite your ear off on live television.
No, not at all. In fact, I think it goes the other way. I'm more likely to do that. Yeah. Yeah. So let's start talking about some news and bits. And there's several people in the chat. And I agree that maybe we should kick the show off with something that's only mildly photo related, but was pretty awesome. And that was Elon Musk and the launch of the Falcon Heavy yesterday, and the fact that he now has his car and it's floating through space. Or maybe we should say powering through space, and eventually is going to end up in some orbit way out around the asteroids. Just such a cool thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Yep. And I think it was pretty funny. Tony Northrup tweeted this morning that we can all stop taking pictures of our cars or car pictures because Elon Musk has won that, because he's got a bunch of cameras strapped to this car. And so you can not only watch the live stream. I don't know, is it still going? It was as of, you know, yesterday evening. So to see the car kind of floating by Earth, but of course you can take a screenshot. And so here's this picture of this convertible Tesla with Earth in the background and a dummy in a spacesuit sitting in the driver's seat. So just really, really cool. Watching the booster rockets land themselves was awesome. Bummer that the main engine or the main core didn't make it back onto the drone ship. Apparently it was really close, but it just clipped the edge of the ship. The science, the math, the computer engineering that must go into landing a rocket ship back onto a moving boat is just amazing to me as well. So very cool. Let me see if I can find. I think Roy put it in. We are all in agreement that this out of this world here. Let me pull this up right here.
And did you watch the video of the booster rockets coming back to the platforms?
Yes, I did.
To me, that was the coolest part. I mean, watching the launch was amazing, but to see those things and the fact that they're so synchronized, it was almost like it looked fake.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm going to become one of these like moon conspiracy theorists. This isn't even happening. Like that right there, that's not even happening. It's totally cool. I love it. And what's more American than like firing a car up into orbit?
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And so here's a screenshot of the two boosters coming in and landing together. And just the synchronicity of that. And just very cool, and a couple different angles of the car in space. And the other interesting thing, and big homage, I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Steve. I don't know if you've ever read that book or watched the movie, but
long time ago.
Don't panic.
I liked it.
Don't panic is displayed on the dashboard. Apparently a copy of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is in the glove compartment of the car as well. And printed on a circuit board somewhere in the car, it says made by humans on Earth. So it's just kind of neat. And
we can't leave this out. David Bowie Space Odyssey air launch in the car, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. David Bowie soundtrack.
One of my favorite songs. That's awesome.
Very cool. So all around really neat. I think, this is going to be one of those kind of bigger milestones in space exploration history. And we'll see more of the launches from this big rocket that is 2 times more powerful than any other rocket currently launching. The only other rockets that were this powerful were the Saturn rockets that launched the Apollo astronauts back in the early 70s. So big deal. Other cool thing that I was reading about is what's going to happen to this car. So it's getting launched out there into space, totally just kind of like it was a test payload. But reading different people's kind of scientific opinion of how fast the car will break down, the amount of solar radiation that it's being bombarded with every second, that's just going to kind of destroy the different materials, especially the more kind of organic materials. It's just all interesting. And it's kind of fun to think about in 50 years, maybe some humans catching back up with it on their space exploration to Jupiter or something like that.
You know what? They should have thrown a Twinkie in the glove box, because I mean, as the car breaks down, then you'll be left with a Twinkie out there floating around forever.
Forever and ever. That is a great idea. Maybe there's one in there, and he's going to surprise us with that information later. That's pretty funny. I hadn't thought about that. Twinkies are scary. Or maybe, I mean, that sounds like the setup for a horror show where an irradiated space Twinkie comes back to Earth to enact its revenge for us shooting it out that way.
Yeah, you may not even need to radiate it. Like, throw a Twinkie and a Big Mac up there and a cockroach, and they'll all have a big party forever.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk about some other things that have happened this past week that don't involve space so much. Steve, you mentioned it, and you put up a really nice post that I appreciate so much on Facebook about me hitting 250,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
It's a nice milestone. It's taken me quite some time to get there, but I'm excited about hitting that and continuing to grow. I'm excited about Penn, and we ran our first webinar the other night, and I've been working hard at putting together, you and I are going to do a Lightroom webinar, so putting together all kind of the supporting mechanisms underneath that over the next couple of days. will be exciting as well. So lots of exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, and I wanted to just kind of put my own little spin on it, and that's why I wanted to put that post out there. I'm super proud of you and super excited for the accomplishment. It's something to be proud of. I mean, you think about it, 250,000 people. That's just a ton. And you know, we get so wrapped up in these big numbers, especially when it comes to YouTube. And you and I mean, we spend time watching YouTube and stuff, and you see people with these millions of subscribers. And yeah, that's great, but there's only a few of those people in the world, and there's very few people that have accomplished what you've accomplished. And to go out today and start a YouTube channel and get yourself 250,000 subscribers is almost next to impossible. It can certainly be done. People are doing it and have done it, but it's a huge milestone, and I'm just really stoked on it because that drives everything up till now. And that's why I get to do this every week with you. And that's why we started Penn. And, you know, I mean, there's so many things that have come out of the community. I was going to say little community that you've created, but it's not little anymore. It's a big deal. So congrats. Yep. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I see David Newbolt's just hopped into chat and heard us talking about how awesome Twinkies are. I'm not exactly sure that was what we said, but yes, David, welcome. And everybody in the chat, welcome. I didn't welcome you yet, and I'm sorry I didn't do that because as Steve just mentioned, community-wise, you are a huge part of this community. The 250,000, that means a lot to me. That's important to me. But honestly, you know, not blowing sunshine up anybody's bum holes, but this smaller community of people that have been with me for years now means way more to me. And you all taking some time out to hang out and join us is really appreciated and makes the show more fun.
Yep.
Other stuff going on in just real quick. We have announced that we are returning to New Zealand. That's McKay Photography Academy. Myself, Steve, you're on board for that trip, I think. Yeah. That will be end of April, beginning of May 2019, which I know feels far away. But speaking from somebody who was like, hey, Steve, we're going to Vietnam, you know, in 8 months. And then all of a sudden, you and I are there walking around and drinking egg coffee and doing stuff. I mean, it happens like this. So that feels far away, but I know it's going to be here soon. I'm really excited to go back to New Zealand. It is a landscape photographer's dream. It is an astrophotographer's dream. I mean, seriously, there are a few other places in the world that are as exciting for all of that stuff. So that should be really, really cool. We've officially announced the trip, but we haven't officially opened registration. We've just put a pre-list out, and I think we have enough people who have said they want to go to actually do like 3 trips back to back. Now we can't do that, but that's how many people have said that they're interested. So we'll see. It's kind of exciting.
Wow,
much closer. Yeah. Much closer to, I'm sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, I didn't know that. I knew that we had people chomping at the bit to go to New Zealand. I'm super excited because I haven't been on this tour before, so I'm pumped about it. But man, to do 2 of them, that would just be killer. Yeah. Because you know, selfishly from a staff perspective, you're flying all the way over there, and then we're working while we're there. So there's stuff to do and everything. To be able to do back-to-back tours would kind of be nice, just to get more time out there for the amount of travel it takes just to get there. So hopefully that happens.
Yep. We'll see. Much closer to home, much more for some people. We've announced the Oregon Waterfalls and Coast trip. That trip has happened twice now, and the more recent one was quite a bit different than the first one because of all of the fires in the gorge. But we're going to have a pick of wonderful places to go. That's August 24th to 26th, 2018. So that's just at the end of this summer, or this year's summer, to make it sound confusing. And that should be a fantastic trip as well. I'm excited because I kind of consider it kind of my backyard. You know, it's just a couple of hours away. And we had a great trip last year, and the year before was a very good trip as well. So that should be good.
Yeah, I'd say the Oregon tour and Olympic. Those are like your home tours, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And Glacier kind of too.
Glacier's not too far too. I know. Gosh, I don't like living out here. It's not bad. It's not bad.
Now you're making me sorry I moved to East Tennessee. Although we do have the Smokies coming up. So.
Got the Smokies. Yep, that'll be a great tour. Other stuff that has gone out on this channel, I talked about the gear I took to Vietnam and gave my opinions on just about everything I took and how it worked. If you haven't watched that, if you want to know more of my opinions on how well the Sony performed for me, I talked about it on the show already, how poorly the Microsoft Surface worked for me. And, comments on that, a lot of people saying, yeah, I totally agree. It's terrible. It doesn't work for me. And a couple people saying, oh, I'm really bummed to hear that. It's been working pretty good for me. But the majority of the comments, other people have similar experiences with this device or the similar devices. I did just hear that they've dropped the prices by a couple $100 across the board on these, but they've also, I think, given you a more even cheaper, more low power version, which that's not interesting to me at all because the most high powered spec'd out version isn't capable of doing what it needs to do. Real quick, Caroline, I see, when are we coming to the UK? We hope to do a Scotland trip at some point in the not too distant future. And Caleb, you're asking about, did the wildfires not affect the gorges? They did. But it's fairly localized. So one, there are some spots in the gorges that we can still go to. And two, the trip that we ran this past year was basically the fires were still happening when we were there.
Yeah.
And there are so many other amazing spots that are completely untouched. And of course, out on the coast as well. So it'll be good.
Yeah, that tour, that was interesting. I mean, this has happened from time to time because we're always at the mercy of Mother Nature when we go on these trips. But we really kind of scrambled to figure out, okay, in fact, we sent an email out to everybody that said, look, if this is not going to be the trip that you were hoping for because the gorge was closed or the roads were closed or something. And we had everybody said, nope, I still want to go. And so we really kind of scrambled around. It turned out to be one of the better tours of the year. It was awesome. So even without the gorge, I mean, there's so much to photograph out on that coast. And I'm embarrassed to admit I grew up in Santa Cruz and I've spent like no time on the Oregon coast. I didn't even know that was all up there.
Yeah. Well, you got a pretty beautiful coast from Santa Cruz on up through San Francisco.
Well, that's probably part of the reason why I never made my way up there. It was just, but no, it was really cool. It's a great trip.
Yeah. Steve, you had a Tuesday tip that went out this week, talking a little bit about panoramas. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, there's a tutorial in the membership section of the Penn website on panorama. And when we do the Tuesday tips, we want to come up with something that is of value to you guys, is something that's creative and everything else. And typically that steers us away from things that are already tutorials and stuff that are already on the membership site. But one of the things we're finding is there's so much material on the membership site that there's a lot of stuff that's getting overlooked or not found, or people just don't know that it's there. And as I was going through my photos, there were quite a few panoramic shots that I took. And a lot of it was because I was trying to travel light. And so I would step out of the bus or wherever we were and maybe be stuck with a longer lens than I had hoped for. So I needed to figure out how to make that work. And a panorama is a great way to make that work, both horizontal and vertical. So if you haven't checked that out yet, definitely do so. There's a link to it on the membership site. And it's just one of my panorama shots. In fact, I may go back and just do like A to Z editing of that particular shot so you guys can all see it. But just wanted to get that tip out and hopefully you find it of value.
Nice. Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
I've got a couple of grid shots that I did in Vietnam that I need to stitch together because there was a couple of times where, I talked about how much I loved the 85 on my Sony, and I'd walk out into a place and be like, this is way too long for this scene. And so I'd shoot 3, next level 3, and 3. And I've successfully stitched that together before in Photoshop. And it's a nice option. So it's something so if you haven't checked out Steve's discussion and a little bit deeper dive into that, you should. I put up and this is a goal of mine to do a bunch more of these over the next couple of weeks, short and sweet Lightroom tips. This one is like 5 minutes and 20 seconds long, and it's basically talks about what I do to every photo that comes in. And if you've watched the show a bunch and you've watched this kind of critique and helpfully edit pictures submitted for critique, you've seen a lot of similar stuff. But starting from scratch, an image that's been just imported, what do I do to it? And I'll come back with other things like talk about cropping, you know, just when you want to know all of the different options for cropping and what does that mean. Heather, I know has been, Heather, you're in the group right now or in the chat. You would love to see probably some quick and easy how to get your pictures exported out of Lightroom at various sizes. We can show that in less than 5 minutes. There's just lots and lots of stuff. So I'm very proud of those big, long videos that I've done that are all up there, but I recognize that they're not great when you are like, how do I do just X? And you want specifically that information. So all of that is coming. I'll get another one up this week, and we'll get more up and more. But as Steve mentioned, there's so much content in the site already. Definitely take some time and explore it if you haven't.
Yep.
And we put up a post letting people know that the Mavic Air is now in stock at B&H and Amazon. The link to buy, which greatly supports what I do here, you can find in the show notes, photorec.tv/MMH. Steve, is this the drone for you, or are you going to wait and see what we get from the DJI Mavic Pro 2, which is rumored to be announced in another month or so?
Yeah, so if the Pro 2 comes out in March, which is what they're kind of talking about, then I am going to be doing the wait and see. And it's not really by choice. It's just that I don't need to be going out and spending $1,000 right now on anything. So I'm... yeah, the Mavic Air, I want that in my bag. It's funny because I've referenced this before, but we started this year and I'm like, yeah, I'm good for the next 12 months. I got my super wide angle at the end of last year. I'm set for 2018. And then the Mavic Air was introduced. So dang it, DJI. But so either that will make it into my bag or we'll see what happens with the Pro 2. But yeah, I mean, the truth is, the Mavic Air checks every box of what I said I want in a drone. I can see the Pro 2 being tempting and having, you know, better camera and that kind of stuff, but I'll just be using it for fun. And you know, these things are so good now compared to what they were a couple of years ago. Yeah. That I don't know, the Pro 2 will probably just be overkill for what I need. Even the Mavic Pro right now is a bit overkill for what I need.
Yeah. 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 And you're definitely going to trade off that portability because there's a significant difference. I mean, as portable and as lovely as the Mavic Pro is, that Air is just that much more friendly. And you can probably find a place for it in your camera bag without really sacrificing bringing along, you know, without having to leave behind a lens or something else. Whereas the Mavic Pro 2 or the Mavic Pro, for me, takes the spot of a longer zoom lens often, or I have to make some, you know, switches around in my bag with what I'm bringing because it takes up that much more room. Still, yeah. You know, again, I think you kind of touched on this, amazingly portable and so much better than what we had a couple of years ago. But when you look at it next to the Air, you're like, well, that's a pretty big significant savings in space.
Yeah, and that's a big deal to me, the size, being able to pack it in my bag. I was sold on the Spark when it came out, only to find out that the propellers didn't fold in. And it was still small. You and I tested it out. You could still find a spot in the bag for it, but that was disappointing to me. And then when I found out I didn't shoot RAW, that was a deal killer. Because for stills, I want to be able to work a RAW image. So, you know, like I said, the Mavic Air has everything I want. So it's just a matter of finding some change in the couch cushions.
I'm going to come sleep on your couch if you get that kind of change stuck in the cushions. All we got is dog hair and old dog bones in our couch. No. All right. We switched the show up if you haven't watched it in a little while. And also real quick to address, Brian, you're looking for a few quick Photoshop tips for more advanced users like the framing Steve did. I know, Steve, I think you and Dave both have been talking about some more advanced Photoshop stuff that we'll be working on in the future. But Brian, definitely post in the Facebook group if there's anything specifically you're looking for, so we can put that on our list and get those done.
Yeah. For those who watch the photo critique 2, the competition.
Oh, you should mention. I mean, that went out this past week as well. That went out what 2-3 days ago,
Yeah.
or yesterday. Went out yesterday, I think.
I think it went out yesterday, and I think we recorded it yesterday. You know how David works.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as the video is recorded, he's got it edited and sent out before you even finish recording. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, so we sent that out, and one of the things that we did at the very end is we showed one of my images that had received a merit through the PPA competition, and I kind of talked about just how involved the editing process of that particular image was. Now, to do a walkthrough on what I did with clipping and masking and stuff would take a long, long time. But my point is, Brian, that that's definitely on our radar, doing some more advanced Photoshop techniques, moving stuff around, masking and that kind of stuff. I'm not super savvy on it, but I'm getting better every day. David has been working in Photoshop his whole career since it's been out. And so I'm kind of relying heavily on him for some of that stuff and guidance, but it's definitely something that will be coming for sure.
Yeah. And Brian, Brian, you're coming to Yellowstone. Awesome. Take a moment, if you haven't already, and look through the Photoshop section on editing, because I know I have videos on there on the cloning, looking at the patch removal tool, the clone stamp tool, the content aware fill. I have I think almost 45 minutes of videos that cover those 3 topics, several different ones. So take a look at that as well. And yeah, so I would just want to re-mention this, Steve. You and Dave put out the image review. This is where people submitted, what they felt is their very best work from this past month. It didn't necessarily have to be captured within that past month, but it's kind of that level of your best image of the month submitted. You guys picked 5, was it?
5, yeah.
5 images, and then really spent time talking about them, almost from the standpoint as if you were judging them for an international competition. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate, and that was our intention. This particular video critique may be a little longer than future critiques, but a lot of that is because we're kind of setting the foundation on exactly what the PPA competition is, what the 12 elements are that is being laid out that these things are judged by, and just a lot of help along the way. But I could see it kind of turning into this hour-long dialogue about particular images as we're critiquing them anyway. So it went really well. The people that have viewed it have said some incredible things. We had the 5 images. I know most of the folks are involved in this group here. Paul Anderson, Roger, Joa. I always get his name wrong. Yep. It's just embarrassing. David Newbold and Max Sense. Yep. I think those were the 5. I don't know if I named 5, but and then Best of Show went to, or Judge's Choice went to Roger's Bird photograph, which was absolutely incredible. David and Allie both chose that one. And then my choice was David Newbold's barn photo from the Grand Tetons.
Nice.
And so if you haven't yet, go check that out. It's a little long, set an hour aside, or you can fast forward and stuff, but it's like taking what Toby and I do on this photo critique and just kind of blowing it up into very detailed feedback on those 5 photographs.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And even if you don't have an image in that group, I think it's well worth watching. Even if you don't, again, you should have the confidence to submit your work for a critique, either through this show or through the other image review that happens in the forum, or submit your very best thing. That's, I think you see that, our goal here is to really give you the skills and kind of the ideas and editing capabilities to take these images to the next level. But, just watch it, because you just learn, things to look for, and what does a pro photographer see when they bring the viewfinder up to their eye. You can start to hear that through how you, Steve and David and Allie, talk about these images. Yeah. So yes, fantastic. Looking forward to February's. I am going to participate from time to time, but I'm really happy to let you guys handle this sometimes too. Because, there's other things I'm
Not like
working
you
on.
have anything else going on, right?
Yeah. Hey, I've got all of my Vietnam video clips organized and in the video editor, but I haven't laid a single one onto the track yet. I feel really far behind on that, but that's my goal over the next couple of days on top of all this other stuff that we got.
Yeah.
But we're going to dive into critiquing right now. We have a good number, I think almost a dozen submitted. We're going to keep it on the shorter side for these. It's a little bit of a faster kind of breezy overview of these because one, what you and David and Allie are offering through the more professional level critique. Two, that the forum is available to you all for critiquing as well. And of course, you can post on Facebook from time to time if you just need a quick, hey, I love people putting up a picture and saying, hey, what do you think of this? Black and white versus color, or what do you think of this? Which one should I print? There's been a lot of great stuff posted lately. But let's jump in, share my screen, and here we go. Steve, you can see this?
Yeah. Yep. I got you.
Great. All right. So we're starting off with Lisa's in the Chinese garden at Huntington Gardens in Pasadena, California, which let me tell you, Huntington Gardens is one of my favorite places on earth. I don't know if you've been there, Steve.
No.
It is I think it's safe to call it it's a ginormous botanical garden that has like a whole kind of Asian garden area that's huge, a whole cactus garden. They've got a museum with some of James Audubon's early bird drawings. It's just a really cool place. All right. So Lisa says, I like the contrast between the shadows in the foreground and the midday sun in the back, but I'm not sure if I got the balance right. Also struggling with the crop. My instinct is that the square is right. So we're working with a JPEG here. So Lisa, I think you've already done some edits to this, including the crop. So we're stuck with what you've done, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does limit us in what we can do. So the first thing that I think when I see this is, the very first thing is I think you've done a nice job with exposure. There's detail from the darks to the brights. We look at the histogram, we don't have anything slammed against the right or the left-hand side. And that's, to me, is a visual kind of like a confirmation that you've done a nice job here. But what bugs me is that we're just a little off kilter for this view through here. And it's not enough to feel deliberate. It's just enough to feel like it might have been just kind of a quick snapshot. And that's distracting to me. So, and it doesn't help that we have all of these things that we can use kind of in our brain to line up. Like I see the tile work down here and the lines heading off to the right and getting closer and closer to the edge, and they're heading off to the right as they go off into space this way. And especially these two little pillars right here. Now, I know it's always easy to say as the reviewer, the critiquer, oh, you should have just stepped a couple steps to the left. Maybe you were hiding somebody. Maybe there was something in your way. But anytime I am shooting a fairly symmetrical looking object, I am going to be extremely careful to shoot it as symmetrically as possible. So that's my only real issue with this. And if you can't shoot it symmetrically as possible, then shoot it off kilter enough that it looks like it's very deliberate. Like maybe step to the right a couple of steps and open up this little view here and get a little bit of both of these, kind of a kind of a play of both shapes. That's what I would say. That's all I got, Steve.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you know, first of all, the square crop is the right crop in my opinion. But again, that square crop automatically puts the viewer in the mindset that things should be symmetrical, right? I mean, you do a square crop. The rule of thirds can still apply with a square crop, but I like using a crop like this when everything is symmetrical and lined up. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the things that bother me are the two pillars in the foreground to begin with, and then you got one of them is right on the edge of that kind of square design at the bottom below the circle on the right. And then that circle is cutting off that same square design in the second layer. And so, yeah, this, it's hard as a viewer. So let's say it was lined up symmetrically. I'd still like to see some brightening of the shadows, and you probably have room to do it because you did a great job of getting the detail of the tree and everything in the background. But to bring the shadows up in the different layers and brighten them, together as much as possible, that's just going to kind of play in, and maybe even try it as a black and white. I don't know. I like the color in the background with the tree and everything. There's not a lot of saturation or vibrant colors leading up to that. So I think a black and white is probably not necessary, but something to try out. But yeah, I just really wish that it was symmetrically done. And I think you nailed it, Toby, when you said that it's not off enough to look intentional. You know what I mean? Like there is a way of doing this, but it's not quite this position because there's too many things that are cutting off edges or right on edges, and just a little sliver of the color on the left, and it's doesn't quite look intentional enough.
Yeah.
So.
And I think a good point about bringing, I just brought the shadows up a little bit more while you're talking. You don't want any part of the image to look dingy, and bringing those shadows up a little bit more, I think, gives this wall a more whiter, nicer look to it. Nice. Okay. Lisa's got another one. This is from Griffith Observatory that's got a nice shot of, I think that's right, downtown LA.
Now I have been here. Yeah, this place is awesome.
Yeah. And you say, so you've got other shots of just the city lights, but you had a feeling this is such an iconic location that you wanted one with the building in the frame. Does it work? What do you think, Steve?
So yes, it does work, and I'm glad that you did this. I'd like to see it, if you were to take this shot again, I'd like to see it a little bit wider, or perhaps it's been cropped in. I don't know. The reason I say that is this window in the lower left-hand corner. So visually, your eye is going to start down there, right? And there's this huge area of blackness. So I'd want to see the shadows increased and see some detail in the darker areas in the lower left-hand side. There you go. And then window that you come to after the lattice is right at the edge of the frame. And so I'd want to see some space below that to really kind of frame it up. And I only say these things, and similar to my comments on the previous image, as these are things to think about when you do go out and shoot, especially architecture or symmetrical shapes and designs and stuff, is to check all your corners, check the frame edges, and see, okay, if something is being cut off, is it at least leading the viewer to complete it on their own visually? When a window is cut off right at the bottom of it, not allowing the shadow to finish, or the framing around the window to finish, it kind of frustrates the eye, right? So I think you got the right idea here for sure. I don't know if there's a way of, and bringing that in, that balances it out very nicely, because it's very heavy on the left. And so visually, you don't want the viewer to just get lost in what's over on the right-hand side. And
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Steve. I'd like to see a little bit more of the building. So, your idea was to incorporate the building. Let's get a little bit more in there. And I used the gradient tool over on the side. You don't always have to just bring them down or up. You can bring them in from the side to just kind of brighten the shadows over there a little bit. And I did it really quick just to give you an idea. You can see there's issues with that up here. The reason I did the gradient and not overall exposure is because I think your exposure out here is perfect. The lights, the shadows, the sky, it all looks really nice. And so you don't want to mess with that, but you definitely want more detail out of the building. And you need some brushwork here to bring this back down. But I actually didn't notice that you have part of the domed roof until we brightened it up. So that was part of the image. You want to make sure it's visible in there.
Yeah. So what I would say to Lisa, if she was on tour with us here, is I'd say, okay, you've got your camera settings down. You got the exposure right. You know what you're doing as far as that goes. Now it's just time to fine tune the composition. And so feel confident that you know what you're doing with your camera settings. The next time you go out and shoot, really think about your composition. Really check all the four corners before you push the shutter button. Look at some of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I think you'll be happier, and your images will. They're minor things. Sometimes we just need somebody else to point these out to us, and then we start to think about it when we're looking through the viewfinder.
Yep. The one other thing that I would say is your exposure level here is tricky in that you have these bright spotlights just lighting up the side of the building enough that that area is blown out. And this might be a spot where it would be worthwhile to take two images, one that gets the exposure of the building perfect, one that gets the exposure of the city perfect, and then a little magic blending in Photoshop, which is one of those topics that we could cover in the future.
Toby, what's the shutter speed? It's a little small. I can't see it.
15 seconds. 15 seconds.
15 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and Roger's pointing out in chat, and I agree with this too, the building looks like it's leaning just a little bit. I think it would be worth a guided transform to get that to stand up a little bit straighter as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
Totally agree.
Nice shots, Lisa. Thanks for submitting. Now, Christina, I think goes by Chris, right? It's got this lovely horses in a field. It looks like it's afternoon light or maybe morning light. And I think Chris just came back from a nice family vacation in Brazil, was it? So maybe this is a shot from down there. Certainly looks like it could be tropical. Steve, you got some thoughts?
So this is beautiful. Gosh, the lighting is just gorgeous. Sorry. This is one I'd like to see reversed. I know that might look a little awkward to especially the maker because she saw it this way. But the reason I did that is, and you got to be careful when you reverse things, look for things like wording and stuff like that to make sure it's not obvious that it was reversed. But do you see on the lower left-hand corner now where that hump of grass is your starting point visually, and now your eye is going to travel up that? And you're going to notice the horse right away, but this is like a natural leading line now. This photo before it was before we saw the prior one, it would it just kind of flows more naturally. So I personally like this one reversed. And I think I don't know what has been done to the sky. It looks a little over processed to me. The clouds just look a little too contrasty. I'd want to soften them up or bring the clarity down a bit, maybe with a graduated filter. I don't know if one's been applied there with a little too much dehazing or contrast applied. But
you'd soften them a little bit.
I would soften the sky. I like the color in the sky. It's beautiful, but the attention's the horses and the foreground and the bright greens, and we don't need a heavy sky. We want the sky to just and as my eye travels from the bottom to the top, I want it to just be a nice soft ending and not have my eyes just get stopped by these dark clouds. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, good. And Chris is specifically looking for some advice printing wise. And one thing that I would say that I'm noticing, agree with everything you said, Steve, I like it flipped now. It feels a little over sharp to me. The detail in the grass in this horse. Now, it might be just because the horse is kind of speckly, but I would be careful about that. In some prints, I think it could look a little over sharp. And let's see what you do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you're going to go to print, I would highly recommend, I don't know if you know how to do this, but pull this into Photoshop, do a bunch of healing of these little black dots that are chunks of grass that are broken up, or horse, poop or whatever that is. but clean up all of that so that the focus is just on the horses on this nice, green grassy area. And then I would also take out the telephone poles and wire that are back there.
I agree.
That's just, so if you're going to go to print, you're going to do something big and really spend time to get it out of the computer and on your wall. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, it's a lovely image. I definitely think it's one worth printing. But I agree also with Steve said, and I was going to add that the telephone poles, and there's a little bit of a tarp or something poking in here. Just little things that would be pretty easy to remove because there's kind of jungle and trees behind them to hide them.
Yeah, talk about capturing beautiful light, though. Jeez.
Yeah, very nice. I wanted to see if your time of day, what time of day it was. 7:46 p.m. on December 31st.
There you go.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Nice
Very
job.
nice. All right. So Max Sense told me that no notes here, but he messaged me. He's got his new macro lens, and is this the only one we have from you, Max Sense? I think, or we got this one too. Can we talk about both of these together? So you were looking for some kind of tips and ideas to really kind of strengthen your macro shooting. And I love macro photography. I think it is a fantastic way if you're feeling kind of like the area around you have to photograph is boring, or you feel stuck at home. Excuse me, stuck at home. A macro lens just really opens up a world of possibilities. Just so much more excitingness. But the biggest challenge that you deal with in macro, and Steve, I don't know if I don't do a ton of macro. Every once in a while I see something and I'm like, ooh, let me get the macro lens. But the biggest challenge is depth of field.
Yeah.
When you are working at these wide apertures and these very, very close distances, your depth of field is like leaf thin. It's razor thin. Chris is giving us a puppy update in the chat for anybody who wants to know.
It's always a good distraction.
So that the first thing in here is that this is kind of a neat shot. You're using some other, I think, leaves there's just a hint of a bigger leaf here to naturally frame this in this kind of diamond shape, which is cool. But then within that, I'm not hitting a clear subject. These leaves over here are cool, but and seem to be the most in focus, but they're just surrounded by a bunch that's so similar and also mostly in focus. And then we get over here and we're very out of focus. So the pattern on these leaves is awesome. I think that's what caught your eye. And I would love to see an isolation or a detail of just maybe these 4 leaves right here with those little 2, and look at the fur or the fuzz on the stems as well. So that's my thought looking at this one. Anything you want to add, Steve?
Yeah, I totally agree, especially if we're talking about macro photography. I want to get in really tight on the detail of the image. So when I first saw this one, I thought, oh, I hope it's cropped in so that you can zoom back out and really show kind of the scene of the leaves that are closer that you're peeking through. But I would get rid of all that's around it. I'd go in tight on the sharp areas. There's you got some room, but
there is some room.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd still broken leaf down there in the lower left that I consider maybe fixing or something, because the negative space there, the black shape right there, really, as soon as you notice it, it's just I keep looking at that whole grouping of leaves, and I just keep seeing that little black spot right there. So yeah, I'd go in tight. The detail of what's going on in those leaves is totally cool. Yeah.
And we lost a little detail here. So, again, I think our recommendation is to have shot it much tighter this way.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if we're talking about macro photography. I have not done much with macro. My wife loves to shoot macro. So we've been actually talking about investing in a lens.
I remember Renee, your wife in Iceland. We're all looking at these big landscapes, and she's coming back to the bus with this little shot of like a little pink flower or something coming up through the pebbles. Is really cool.
Yeah, it was totally neat. That's kind of where she fell in love with macro photography. That became like her deal when we were there, because she knew that I was getting off the bus and I was shooting all the vast landscapes. I was a client back then. And then she took all these macro shots, and it was cool because when we got home, we had both perspectives. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. And another shot from Max Sense, though, this water drop here, I think I like this image a lot. But this is where I think you really want to explore focus stacking, or bringing in some other light that allows you to, up that aperture so that you get a little bit more depth of field, because it feels like just the beginning of the front of that water drop isn't as sharp as I want it to be.
Yeah, that's probably, what are the settings here? Does it tell you under the histogram?
F2.8.
Yeah, but what? Oh, 2.8. Okay.
Yeah. Which I think it's the 100. So at Max Sense, I think you're working with the 100. I don't know if it's the L or the standard. Both of them are very nice macro lenses.
What's the shutter speed?
1/50th of a second. I'm going to assume
so if you're at 100 millimeters at 1/50th of a second, even like with macro, you gotta be really careful. There, you run the risk of not getting it tack sharp. And with macro, you really need the shot to be super sharp.
Yeah.
So the shutter speed needs to work if you're doing handheld. If he's on a tripod, that's a different story. But I think maybe like an f4 would have given you a little bit more focal room.
Roy, I think, are you talking about this one? Roy says go 2-3 vertical and cut off the right side. I don't know if I agree with that, because I kind of like the story. That's cool too. But I kind of like the story of being able to see. I think you could go either way. Let's just reset that. Of seeing the stem come up and then go, into the pad, the radiating lines out, and this right here. I really like this image. There's a lot I like about it. I just want a little bit more depth of field and just a little bit more sharpness. The other thing that I notice is, and this is pretty cool in macro photography. I mean, we can tell, I think we're inside, maybe inside a conservatory or something.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
You can see that in the drop. So I just think it's pretty cool. And hey, we're not done. We're done with Max Senses. Oh, well, actually, the other thing I was going to say is I don't want to give you more stuff to buy Max Sense, but a macro rail system that allows you to do micro adjustments forward and backward is sometimes easier and more effective than trying to focus or move your focus. And that can also both help you with creating several images for focus stacking and also for just finding that point. And what I would do with that is magnify your live view as much as you can, and then move that rail to make sure you're really nailing focus exactly where you want. Now we've got Heather. Let's see, Heather, did you include any notes? Heather, I know you've worked with a Lens Baby, and I would suspect that this is a Lens Baby shot, and also a macro shot as well. And, kind of similar to Max Senses, this is very cool. We've got enough sharpness here to tell what this is, and then I like how we have all of the rest in the background. But I would like the stem part to be in focus as well. And this is your subject, so I would like all of it to be in focus. And I think we could do that and still keep the background soft. I also would love it if this was positioned just to the right a little bit. I know that's starting to get close to the edge of the frame, but it separates it from this big group in the background and creates just kind of a little bit of a reinforcement of, hey, here's my subject, kind of isolated both through focus and isolated through placement.
Yeah, one of the things that I'd like to draw everybody's attention to is you can see how the top of that is focused, and then, like you said, I'd want to see more focus on the stem. But you can also see right in the lower right side at the bottom, that must be the same plane as the top of the subject, is also in focus. So that's part of the problem of these set of close is you start to notice the little areas that are in focus and the little areas that are out of focus. And you want to find where you can set your aperture to get, most of that area in focus, so the eye isn't constantly darting around between these spots that are out of focus and in focus, if that makes any sense. It starts to compete for your visual attention a lot, and it actually takes me off of this little bowl that is in focus, and all of a sudden I start noticing this this brown thing down at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Which is, those two are just competing for my attention. So
good points. And so Heather posted in the group, this is working with the Lens Baby Velvet 56, which is kind of a, it has that tilt shift capabilities.
Okay.
It kind of can move the lens around on this ball joint. And the only, I love those comments, Steve. A lot of interesting stuff here, which is neat, but you don't want multiple interesting things kind of competing. The only other thing that I did was I brought the highlights down a little bit because that rim of the cup was catching my eye. It was just a little bit bright, but otherwise I think your exposure is really nice here. And with just a couple of the comments that Steve and I said, I think you're in pretty good shape. Mm-hmm. Another from Heather, more detail here. These things are cool. But what grabs my attention is this big rock, this wet rock that looks like some kind of slimy toad from a Zelda game or something like that. So this is, and Steve, I've learned this from you. I love the idea of kind of like, as you're about to capture a picture, you think about what your subject is, and you scan all four corners of the frame. And we say corners, but we basically mean all of it. Mm-hmm. Oh, Heather corrects me. Sorry, the 56 does not shift. It's a prime type lens. No, what's Lens Baby about it then? Or maybe I don't know it as well as I think. All right, so, and in this case, your subject was those little cups. But as I said, for me, I'm grabbed by this rock, and it even looks like it has an eye here. There's a fish that lives in the Chesapeake Bay called a toadfish, and it looks a lot like this rock. So that might just be my personal experiences, haunted by toadfish in my past. But it sets up a distraction for me.
Yeah, I agree. It does. It kind of provides definition for the line that goes from. So first of all, I would flip this around again, because we don't, visually we like to go left to right. At least here in America, we do. So I'd flip it around, and then I'd want to see more like an 8:10 kind of ratio crop on it, because everything up there in the top left now is just dead space and there's nothing interesting about it. So I'd want to be very intentional about, and then put the subject in the top right third. Top right. Oops, sorry. I could tell. There you go. So you still got, Toby's toad rock in there, but you're traveling from left to right, lower left corner up to the top right edge. And you're very intentional about what the subject is. You're in a little tighter, and there it is. And the brown is actually, I don't have a big problem with it, because it provides some contrast now that we're in tight behind the green, and kind of sets it off. Okay. So that would be my 2 cents on this one.
And what do you think about this, Steve? I just threw in a radial gradient with, so the outside, let me just do something drastic for a minute. Change the exposure. It's affecting outside of the gradient. And what I did was I dropped the clarity a little bit, and I dropped the saturation a little bit. So outside the circle, things are a little softer, a little more muted. I feel like that helps. I was going to
say that applying a vignette and, kind of keeping it around the subject would look pretty cool on this picture. A lot of times we want to get rid of that or just apply it. But I would do a pretty liberal vignette on this.
Yeah.
Black vignette. Yeah. We don't have to open up that discussion again.
All right. So yeah, Heather, I need to look up the difference of the lens babies. I know that some of them offer that kind of tilt shift capability. Some of them offer the sweet spot focus, and some of them do some other things. But I'm happy to learn a little bit more about them. MaxSense, going back to MaxSense real quick, he's got the Arsenal on the way for focus stacking. The Arsenal is kind of a high-end camera remote that is supposed to do a lot of smart things beyond just triggering your camera. And one of those will be to kind of shift focus, take a picture, shift focus, take a picture. And it even says it's going to be able to combine them into a JPEG or a RAW. So their marketing of that device looks really snazzy. My experience, when the marketing is so snazzy, things hardly ever live up to it. But MaxSense, I'm really excited to hear about that. They're supposed to send me one at some point, I think. I should follow up with them. And we'll see. And then let's see, what else was there? Somebody else said something. Oh, Roy pointed out that, if you can wait for an ant or something in some of these kind of more macro shots, that can be pretty cool as well. Good suggestions. All right, moving on. This is Adrian's. This, I believe, is at Great Falls, which is, I know Adrian and MaxSense both know each other and live and shoot down in that Washington, D.C., Virginia area. This is the Potomac River. And this is a pretty cool shot. I looked at this a little bit earlier because Adrian had to send it in a slightly different way. And I can't remember if I already started to crop this or if you did, Adrian. I think I did, because my first thought was to really crop in some. There's not much story down in that foreground. I would come up somewhere in this general vicinity. Actually, I'm going to stay wide because I want to keep that there. The things that caught my eye in this image is we got 3 layers. We've got these cool birch or I don't know, whatever trees these are. No, actually, they're not birch, cottonwoods or something that stand out white against the rest of the winter trees. And then we've got the flow of the river. And then, of course, we have the falls right here. And so my inclination is to kind of tighten it up, bring it in so that those are really the 3 elements that stand out in this image.
Yeah, completely agree. I would, you started to do this and then you went wide again. On the left side, I would bring that crop line in to have the start in the lower left corner be that kind of the rock edge. I don't know if that makes sense, Toby.
All right. Honestly, I was reading chat, so I don't quite in here somewhere.
Yeah, and I would keep it where it was. I would just unlock it and then bring that left edge in slightly, because you want to keep the trees up there. So gotcha. Go back wide where you had it, and then just unlock it. So and then that left edge I would bring right just a bit, because you have halfway up the frame, you have a pointy rock that's a triangle and it's kind of getting cut off. I'd want to crop that out, and then I'd want to start it visually with the. I wish I had a mouse that I could show you.
Yeah, me too, because I'm not following.
You had it. We go back to the crop that you had done right before I started talking. It was right there. Yeah. Now just unlock it and then go to the left edge and just bring that in slightly. Nope. Back out. There.
Oh, that triangle. Gotcha.
Yeah, that triangle. Gotcha. And then also look at the bottom left corner. That rock in the foreground should be kind of your visual starting point, your launching point, if you will, since we did SpaceX today. And
so would you come in like that?
No, I would still show water around it.
Okay. But come in a little bit more to that point.
Yeah. Maybe left just slightly to where look halfway up the frame, and you can see just beyond that pointy rock is something like that. I think this is a cool shot.
I like it a lot.
Is this? Did we go here on the DC tour last year? Did we take people to this?
We did. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I remember shooting this. It's beautiful there. A lot of nice homes around there too.
Yep, that's right. If it feels a tiny bit crooked, I'm going to come to the right a little bit. I could be wrong about that. Adrian, you've done a good amount of editing on here already. Obviously, turned it black and white. You've added a post-crop vignette, and I think it's a really nice shot. I'm not sure. The only other thing that I do in shots like this from time to time, and maybe you've done this, is get a paintbrush and up the clarity and paint on the rocks just to really kind of bring out that hard, crisp texture of the rock and help it stand out against that smooth texture of the water.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of a quick look at what I would do.
Yeah.
Nice. Good shot. A little bit of cropping and we're good. It's funny, go from Washington, D.C. up to Alaska. Jeremy's, in some ways, a similar shot, a nice flowy water. I have a soft spot for pillowy water. As you like to say, Steve.
I do. This so I think the shutter speed was a little too long on this, though. It's a great shot. It's very visually interesting, but this is a case where it's like too pillowy. You start to lose the motion of it. Do you know what I mean? Like now it's kind of like clouds, like it's just puffy around this rock, which is a visual center point to the image. I'd want to see it just a little quicker shutter speed is going to have more motion around that rock. And it's just going to give you more of a sense of water kind of moving instead of just puffing around that rock or pillowing around that rock.
So you're saying that because you'd like to see a little bit more detail in this kind of space down here.
Yep.
We shot this at 5 seconds. I'm betting you would think somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds would probably be.
Yeah, good. I think even 1 second will still get you that really cool, like, okay, this is water that's moving, but it's been softened, but it'll have enough detail in it that it will look like a lot of motion. And every water, some little trickles. Sometimes you have massive amounts of water just flying off a cliff. And it's a good idea to just take multiple shots at different shutter speeds because when you get home and get it on a big screen, that may be something that you find you want to figure out what works.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I do. As I said, I have a soft spot for this. I guess it could be seen as a little bit too pillowy and smooth, and maybe a little bit shorter could be good. Same thing that I did with Adrian here. I would take a brush and kind of brush on. And the other thing that I wonder, and I think the answer is yes, but did you use a circular polarizer too? This rock is just a little bit shiny in spots, and that circular polarizer can just really help cut those reflections. Because a little bit of that reflection there is distracting me. The other thing we could do is that brush I talked about that increases clarity. We could also try to bring down highlights and maybe even exposure a little bit and see if we can get that rock to just not, again, my goal not only in texture, but also kind of in an exposure often is to really make it stand out from the water flowing around it. So here's this darker, colorful rock when we got this kind of more muted water flowing around it. And there are times where I'll also take a brush and really lower, let me hold down the Alt key and reset, lower the saturation of the water itself to kind of, if there's any color cast to it. Now this water's got a little bit of a greenish from the rocks underneath, which it's kind of interesting actually, but sometimes you get a brownish or a bluish, and just kind of brushing in here can help clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would do and work in this image, I may have said this before on this channel, when you look at an image like this, a good thing to do when you're on the basic panel doing global edits is to squint your eyes, and then any of the spots that are really hot or bright, bring the highlights down, bring the whites down until it kind of gets more in line. So the whites just don't blast out at you visually and take your eye away from other things that are going on in the picture. And that's what I would do with this one. I'd take the highlights down. I'd maybe bring the whites down a bit just to, to kind of get some more balance. So it's not so white heavy. And then I would probably crop out that rock that's in the lower left-hand side. I'm a little up in the air on this, but I'd like to, if you unlock the crop and then, yeah, come up and then come in from the left slightly. There you go. Right.
Somewhere in there.
Go back out. See that little line that's in the lower left-hand corner there? That can kind of your starting point. And then the top, I'd come down just slightly.
I come in. I'd done that a little bit already. You want a little bit more?
Yeah, right. Up a little bit. What I'm looking at is the top left corner. Okay. See that rock up there?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at all the corners when I'm cropping, and
yeah, this is nice. And Jeremy, I hope you also got there's with the ice here. The ice is a little lost in all of the white, and so some shots that really kind of emphasize and look at this is cool as well. But I love that. I think overall tones and color of this shot is really nice. Jeremy points out there's a black and white version of this photo in the image review option 1 on the forum. So if you'd like to take a look at that.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Thanks
Thanks
for that note, because I was thinking it might look good that way. Yeah. Oh, I've seen this one from Skylar.
Before we get this real quick, Roy made the joke of you could take over my computer and melt it down, but that made me think, you know what? I've been complaining about Lightroom was being a pig on the Windows thing, but since that last update, I haven't had issues during this show running Lightroom. Remember, we used to have to wait for the beach ball and as I painted and stuff. And so that side of things, it's much more responsive now. Okay.
Interesting.
So we have Skylar. I think this is a hibiscus flower here. Very, very bright image. He's done the virtual matte that you and Dave taught, and pretty snazzy. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of thoughts on this because I think it's a beautiful photo. What I love about this picture is that although it's set off, like your attention, okay, so you're reading it left to right, right? So you start bright and then you end up in this darker area at the center of the flower. It's not right in the rule of thirds. It's kind of way up in the 7/8 category, up in the corner there. And I like that about this picture. It looks like it's intentionally done. Obviously it is, as he was editing it, but it totally works. And it balances out with the detail on the light, flower on the left side. You got this really dark element with a lot of saturation and color around it. And then you have this super bright. I love this picture. I think my only criticism is on the virtual matte with your signature down there at the bottom, Skylar. It's cool. I've got a signature like that from Photo Logo. I just make it a little bit smaller because it's kind of touching the edge of the virtual matte. And I mean, this is nitpicking at this point, but
yeah, it's pretty cool.
And one of the things that he did a really nice job. Sorry.
Nope. Go ahead.
One of the things he did a really nice job of with this is he applied a virtual matte that complemented the photo. It didn't take away from it at all. Maybe that stroke line, the inner matte with the pink color, could be a little bit thinner, just to make sure that you're constantly looking at the subject. But it's great. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah. I guess it would be just, I think the end of this, the stamen or whatever that thing is that comes out of the flower probably has a color to it. I feel like we're so close to seeing it though, that it distracts me. And I'd like either to be, cropping in now totally destroys his virtual matte, but let's pretend that there's still a virtual matte around it. I might want to start with that dark, just solid in the corner. Is that crazy? And just a little bit more intentional in that.
Yeah,
there.
I see what you're saying.
I don't know. I overall, I think it's a great image. I'd like to play around a little bit with that corner though. But we're gonna move on. And Caroline has a puffy little wren sitting here in a garden. 250 f5.6. Really nice backlit. So we've got this, or mostly backlit. So we've got this hint of light. So not only are you separating your subject, similar to what I was talking about with Heather's shot. But not only have you separated your subject by, you know, isolating it with a shallower depth of field at this focal length, but you've also helped it stand out from its background with this little bit of rim light around it. And that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a cute little guy. You've done some, go ahead, Steve.
Well, so I'd crop it a bit, and I'm not sure what kind of ratio, maybe, oh, wow. It's been cropped in pretty tight as it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little unfortunate because you start to see a lot of noise as you get in too tight. But I wanted to crop it in and get rid of the red flowers on the left. Let the branch in the lower left be the starting point. Do kind of a wide horizontal sort of crop, so you still get, you know, you got the bird kind of in the lower left third. And then I would just go through with a brush and I just lighten up the bird and probably the branch he's on, but for sure the bird, just to get a little more detail.
Let me do that real quick. I agree with those things. Let's see if we can bring up the shadows a little bit more. Oh, you've already worked on him some. Good. I say basically what you've done, I think, is what Steve and I would suggest. You were as close to him as you could be. I think you're probably shooting with a 55 to 250 lens, and so that's where you were limited out. But then you've did a brush where you've brought those exposures and those shadows up a good bit. And another brush, is that the brush that I just did? And then you worked on the eye a little bit with a little bit more exposure and clarity and saturation to bring that color out. And also a little iris enhance on that cute little birdie as well. And you know what? The same brush that you used on the eye, I might even use on that beak, just to brighten it even a little bit more and increase the color and saturation so it stands out.
Go back out to the original crop, Toby, just for a second.
Oh, I jinxed myself. There we go. Okay. Lightroom's slowing down now that I said it hasn't been too bad. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to take a look at it. I mean, we're getting in pretty tight. I was maybe a vertical, maybe like a 2-3 vertical with the bird in the lower portion, showing just a lot of this kind of bokeh negative space above him. I don't know. It's
And Caroline, I think you've done a nice job of I really have jinxed myself. It's gotten much slower. You've done a nice job. That crop was really trying to avoid as much messy stuff back there as possible. And I like that. I'm struggling, Steve, a little bit with you wanted that branch right in the lower left corner.
No, not right in the corner. Just
kind of down there.
Like something like that would be good.
Like that. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I like that because you don't have those distracting elements on either side, which you'd need to either, you know, crop out or clip out. But I like all the out of focused area above him.
Bring the clarity down. There we go. A little bit more. Drop the clarity. A little bit of the background that you brushed on a noise removal already. And
you can even darken it just a bit so the bird still appears brighter or a little lighter.
Yeah. Nice edits, Caroline. Next step is to sneak in a little bit closer. All right. Let's wrap that epically long critique up.
That's awesome, though. I'm glad to see so many people submitting images. It's great.
Yeah, very good.
Wish we had more time.
Let's jump into a couple of news stories. One being the Olympus has, Olympus has just announced the Pen EPL-9. This is a pint-sized mirrorless camera that happens to shoot 4K video. Now, I don't have you remember over a year ago now in Alaska, I took the OMD EM1 Mark II. That's kind of Olympus's flagship level camera, and pretty impressed with it. As far as a micro four thirds photographer's camera goes, it was pretty nice. This little camera also looks quite nice and has the benefit of, and it doesn't show it in any of these pictures, shows this flip out screen actually can slide down and flip 180 underneath the camera. So really, I think targeted at your selfie photographer and selfie videographer. But I think actually, did I find a place where it showed that? Yeah, here's a picture of it doing just that. So flipping out underneath. Major issue with this, though, is if you want to put it on a tripod and talk to the camera and see yourself, you can't.
Yep.
You're screwed.
Yeah.
And I don't think it flips out above at all, only below. And even if it did flip out above, if you have a microphone in the hot shoe, you're also kind of screwed. So I don't know why everybody doesn't go to something like the classic Canon flip out, or in this case, the G85, which obviously I haven't touched the Pen 9 yet. And it is very small, and it is still offers interchangeable lenses. But I feel like something like this G85, which comes in at $900, it gives you 4K, it gives you that completely flip out touch screen, and not only does it give you 4K, but it's the dual IS 4K, so it's very stabilized, very smooth. I think that's going to be a better buy for most people. But
yeah, those articulating screens, you know, I've seen so many. I'm always looking at them, right? Because I don't have one on my 5D Mark IV, and I'm always jealous that you do on yours, Toby. But it just seems like some of these companies tend to just overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Canon has just got the articulating screen the design is great.
Yep.
You can flip it around, you can close it up, you can, you know, turn it around, and you can twist it, and it just seems to work. And I think that's the one that they put on the 6D Mark II, which is also considered weather resistant. So yeah. I mean, everybody just take note and just do that with your screens, and we're all going to be happy. We'll buy more of your cameras.
I agree. I agree. I mean, the thing that the Pen has going for it is it is a little smaller, and it has that little bit more of a retro look to it. But, you know, I don't know if that's enough to really make a difference. Other news story we want to touch on is that, I don't know did you watch the Super Bowl, Steve?
I did watch the Super Bowl. Yeah. Well, I was kind of, you know, we had gotten back from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I laid on the couch to start watching the Super Bowl. So I was in and out of sleep the entire game. But it was a good game.
Yeah, it was. It was. Do you watch the sidelines to see if you can spot who's shooting what?
Yeah, I do.
So apparently, Canon, you know, really, this is not a big surprise. This has been a strength of theirs for a very, very long time, but that Canon really dominated the sidelines. Do they have numbers in here somewhere? February 4th showed that 2018 is off to a great start as top photographers around the country gathered in Minnesota. An estimated 80% of the photographers in the stadium used Canon EOS cameras and EF lenses. 80%.
Wow.
It's pretty big.
You mean everybody didn't have an 89 on the sidelines? I don't get it.
I know. I bet there were just a couple. It's simply, you know, they just haven't had a chance to test that out yet and realize how much better it is. No, I mean, these are tried and tested gear that works in all conditions. This was an indoor game, but and the other point they make here is that CPS was there, Canon Professional Services. I saw a picture from them. They had on-site support, on-site gear loans, so that, you know, that is a support network and an ecosystem that when you're a professional shooter is important to you, and blows away all other competitions. And I think we should brace ourselves for the exciting Canon, maybe we'll see them from Nikon and maybe even Sony as well, the pictures of the Olympics coming up, which starts tomorrow night. The Winter Olympics start.
That's awesome.
I always remember those rooms they show with all of the Canon gear because CPS is there, Nikon is there, and Sony will certainly have a presence there as well. But when you compare it percentage-wise, it's just much, much less.
Yeah.
And then we kind of touched on this already, but there's the rumor that we're going to get a new drone from DJI. Yes, we did just get the Mavic Air, but we'll get a Mavic Pro 2 that's going to sport a 1-inch sensor. and that may be announced as soon as March.
What size is the current sensor?
It is your kind of, I think it's a half inch, basically. It's a 1 and 2.3 or something like that.
Wow.
And it's basically a point and shoot on the Spark, on the Mavic, on the Mavic Air. And the only time that I really see, well, the only place that you're going to really see this difference is either in low light or in high dynamic range situations. It definitely doesn't handle very bright situations great. It's kind of like your smartphones from 2 or 3 years ago. And so a 1-inch sensor, could be much better.
How big is the sensor in the Phantom 4?
Well, there's different, actually, we might be getting out of, if I'm not sure. I think there is a model with a 1-inch sensor in the Phantom 4. I don't know if all of them have it, because they have like so many Phantom 4s. They got a Phantom 4 Pro, they got a Phantom 4, like, I don't know, they got a bunch of different ones. I guess I could Google that, but Phantom 4.
I watched one of the videos on comparing the new Mavic Air with the Mavic Pro and the Spark and the Phantom 4, and I was still just totally blown away at the quality of Phantom 4. That thing is, now it's not something that I would buy, but if I was serious about using a drone and wanting to capture the best footage I could, that's the one to.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can go way up, with some of these more super high-end professional stuff. But as a consumer, the quality of the footage was just awesome.
Yeah. It looks like all the Phantom 4s have a 1-inch sensor as well. So
so that would be pretty killer. I mean, you're talking about 100% increase in size.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And the other thing that I wonder, most of the Phantom 4s can do 4K at 60 frames per second, which again, for slowing down to half speed, just makes things look so epically lovely. The Mavic maxes out at 4K 30. The Mavic Air maxes out at 4K 30 as well. So if they could do both of those things in a portable drone, that would be pretty exciting. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
That's probably what they're doing, right? They're probably taking everything from the Phantom 4 Pro and putting it into a Mavic Pro 2 and making it more compact, and then they'll just do away with the whole Phantom line.
Oh, I don't know. I think they'll keep the Phantom line.
You do?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll just kind of up its capabilities just a little bit more.
Don't they have another line that are like those black?
Yeah, they've got the what are those guys called?
Inspire.
Yep.
Inspire. Right. Yep. There we go.
They have this Inspires, and now is this the one? Yeah, the Inspires, and they're not cheap. Like the DJI Inspire 2 comes in at $3,000, which isn't cheap, but that is what I just spent on a camera. So if aerial photography or videography is your thing and your focus, then that's a reasonable price. And that supports the Cinema D&G and ProRes recording, and has the whole kind of, I think these are the ones that have the switchable lenses as well. So you can put they have the carbon fiber micro 4/3 lenses that you can put on there and have different focal lengths. So, we can get fancy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like you said, if that's your thing, that's your profession, or you're, a super hobbyist with the money to do it. I mean, that's pretty cool what you can do with these drones.
Yep.
The quality of the shots.
Yep. That's it. There are more news stories. Of course, you can go check them out. Roy has done a great job of collecting all of the interesting photography news stories and put them at photorec.tv/MMH. That stands for Mishmash Highlights. We're moving on to the micro stock section, where Toby and Roy sell photos and hopefully show you how stock photography goes. I'd say sometimes we do a good job of that. Sometimes we just say, hey, we've earned this much. Roy, you're up to $17.82. That's a pretty big jump from last week, isn't it? You made a $1.88 more on Shutterstock, 25 cents more on Big Stock Photo, for that jump up to $17.82. I gotcha. I am at I don't know what I'm at. couple dollars more than I talked to you last week. I'm selling about one of those owl pictures a day, and a couple other places. Ben, who mentioned last week that he made sold a shot to National Geographic through the thing. He has posted that. If you haven't seen his post, and as long as you're not grossed out by innards, you should go check it out. It's a really cool post. It's a really cool story about his wife's birth. It was a cesarean. That's why you're looking at innards. And it's just a neat story. So Ben, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for posting it in the group. And if you haven't looked at it, go take a moment to do that.
Yeah, that story was beautiful. I know we talked about it last week of how long it took him for him to get his money from was it National Geographic?
Yeah.
But when you read the story, it's it all kind of makes sense why it happened the way it did, and then his reaction to it, like people saying, "Hey, we want to pay you for this," and he's going like, "Whatever, who is this?"
Oh yeah. I think that would be many of us. It would be like,
oh, that would be me all day long. Super skeptical. Yeah. But to read that story and then see the photograph, I'm so glad that he posted that, because the whole time I'm like, oh, I want to see this picture. Then to see the photograph, it's just a beautiful story. So I'm really happy that he shared that. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, very cool. And we just wrapped up the Instagram challenge of PRTV text. There were some really cool ones in there. Roy will be posting our winner picks soon. Now we're moving on to your favorite things. So that's PRTV_favorite things. And Roy went Sound of Music this week with a few of your favorite things. Consider it a wild card, whether it's raindrops on roses or whiskers on kittens. We want those favorite things you remember when feeling sad, something cheerful, fond memory, family, food. I just like take a picture of some pizza. Pizza.
Burritos. Can I tell you that you sounded like Johnny Carson back there when you introduced the favorite things?
Did I?
Yeah. No. I just cued into that. Maybe you always sound like Johnny Carson. I'm just figuring that out right now, but it's favorite things. That's wild stuff. Favorite things.
Yep. All right. We already did our photos from space. I didn't introduce it properly. And quick Q&A as we wrap this puppy up. Maxen says, are in-camera processing settings such as noise reduction applied only to the JPEG, or is it applied to RAW files as well? And my answer is it's a little complicated. But for most of us, most of the time, the RAW file isn't touched. No noise reduction happens to it. No lens profile corrections happen to it. It comes out untouched. Whereas a JPEG, if you shoot RAW plus JPEG and you have noise reduction turned on and you have lens profile corrections and peripheral illumination, some cameras offer, then all of that stuff is applied. But my answer of it's a little bit complicated is that sometimes, like I learned when I shot with, I can reach it. I got this long cord on. When I shot with this stupid little mirrorless camera from Young Innovators, that when I used the Panasonic lens on it, that even though I was shooting RAW, there were huge differences in the quality when that lens was used on the Young Innovators versus on the Panasonic, because the Panasonic has built-in profile corrections that happen even when you're shooting a RAW. And actually, see, honestly, I don't know if that actually happened in camera or if that happened when it came into Lightroom. I think that happened when it came into Lightroom. It was smart enough to look at the RAW file and say, hey, I know what lens you shot this with. I know what profile corrections to fix. And when the lens and camera combination was this, Lightroom didn't know. But I can still stick to it's kind of complicated, because with the Sony, there is some noise reduction. And this is really frustrates some people, and they've been talking about it a lot. It hasn't bothered me, but with the RAW file, there is still some noise reduction that happens at some shutter speed lengths. And that's the whole star eater issue, where there are some stars that get eaten by the noise reduction process in the camera, even when you shoot a RAW. The reason it doesn't really bother me is because the it's such a specific narrow window of both time and brightness of star that when I shoot with, the difference, you just can't really see a difference. But but there is a difference. So I can understand some people that are shooting at that in those specific circumstances often being upset, and Sony should allow you to turn that off more. But what would happen if they do is I think you would get so many hot pixels, because there are a lot of hot pixels that your camera takes care of even when you shoot raw sometimes as well. So you want to add anything about that, Steve?
No, I was kind of curious why he asked the question. It's a really good question.
Yeah.
But I'd like some context behind it. Just my own curiosity.
Yeah. It's good. I wonder if you're thinking about the arsenal coming and how that all works. I'm certainly curious. And, I didn't realize up until recently, like just a couple of days ago, somebody mentioned that it does the focus stacking in the device and passes it back to the camera somehow. I'm really curious to see how all that works. So I'm going to follow up with them and say, hey, you guys going to send me one? But MaxSense, of course, keep us updated.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Caroline, you're asking if the Mavic Air image quality is as good as the Mavic Pro. Steve, you said you've watched some comparisons, and what'd you see?
And it was can I say Neistat on the show?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay. It was Casey Neistat's video. It was hard to tell because he edits his stuff real choppy and really fast, so you only have a couple seconds to look at what he's doing. But he did a nice job of putting the footage side by side, so you could see, okay, this is the Mavic Air, and then you've got the Mavic Pro, and then the Mavic Air versus the Spark versus the Phantom 4, and he kept doing that. And to me, as I remember, the Mavic Pro and the Mavic Air looked very comparable in terms of quality. I think the Pro still looked maybe a little bit of a leg up. The Spark, in my opinion, was way down on the footage. It just looked too contrasty and too vibrant and saturated and stuff. Yeah. But the Phantom 4 Pro, I do remember that standing out. It just looked so crisp and clean, and I think it's because of that dynamic range that you're getting with a larger sensor. I don't know, but so I'd say it's pretty comparable, but I am by no means any expert.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's basically what I've seen too. I think they're very comparable. There's very little reason I see with the Mavic Air out and the current Mavic Pro out to buy the Mavic Pro over the Air. It has a little bit of a longer flight time and a little bit further of a range, but those things, honestly, the difference is slight enough that I would always pick the more portable, little bit more friendly with a few additional cool features Mavic Air.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, if you're in the market for a drone right now, because the Mavic Pro is still a killer drone. Mm-hmm. Just wait a little while. If they come out with the Pro 2, chances are they're going to deeply discount the Mavic Pro. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if you could pick that up for considerably less than what you can get the Mavic Air for, and have the same quality, if not maybe a little better camera on there with a little bit more flight time. I don't know. Yeah. But keep an eye on it. I don't think that if you're debating between those two, I'm not sure that it's your time to buy yet. To the Mavic Air, I'd be fine. I think great buy. But with the rumors about the Pro 2 coming out soon, I'd hold off and see if the price drops on the original Pro.
Yep. Good suggestions, I think. All right. And that's it. We're done. We wrapped up. Now, I've mentioned the Arsenal a couple of times. Roy, maybe you could add it to the show notes if people could check it out, but that is at witharsenal.com. As I said, I haven't had my hands on it yet. I am skeptical because the more flashy the marketing, which they definitely have, usually the less exciting the product, but I certainly will be bringing you more information, and we'll hear from MaxSense too soon as well. Hey, chat room, thank you for hanging out with us and being here and making the show better, asking these questions and giving suggestions when we're giving critiques on images. I think that stuff is fantastic. Steve, thank you so much for taking your evening to spend time with all of us.
Thank you, guys. Are we doing this next week? I know we've got Yellowstone.
I am able to, but I don't think you are. I think you're leaving on that Wednesday.
Next
or
week is
not?
Valentine's Day.
Next week is Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I do. I leave on the 13th, so I will be in Yellowstone.
You'll be in Yellowstone.
So probably count me out unless I'm able to confirm that I've got good internet and all that good stuff. So
yeah, I remember that. If you're at the Come On In there in Bozeman,
it's a nice hotel,
Montana,
but
the
yeah,
internet is yeah, the internet's just so. So we'll probably count you out. It'll be a solo show, or maybe just me and that dog, whatever its name is, Rika. Oh, if you want to see more pictures of Rika, follow my Instagram stories because they've been pretty much 100% dogified.
So did you inherit the name Rika because she's from Costa Rica?
Yeah,
is that how that happened, or did you give her the name Rika?
No, she came with that name Rika, and we call her. You know, I'm sure the people who adopt her will probably change her name to something because Rika's not a very good name. I call her Peanut. I call her Shrinky Dink. I call her.
All I can think about with Rika is Game of Thrones and the character Reek, which.
Oh,
you don't remember that?
I haven't watched much of Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
It's too bloody for me.
It's stretched out over maybe a couple seasons, but it's not a good thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, being named Reek or nicknamed Reek is not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay.
She is cute.
She's pretty cute. All right, Steve. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. See you next week. Bye-bye.
See ya. Thank you.
And I didn't press the stop broadcast.